A couple months ago, I set out to shoot my very first official music video, and so I wanted to take you guys through the process of how I lit, shot, and colored it, all with only a one-man crew, myself. So hey, welcome back. It's been a while for those of you that have watched past videos. I know it's been a while since the last upload, but I've been very busy with a lot of different projects, and I'm really excited to bring you guys along on one of the most recent projects that I shot, which is the music video for Good Beach Freestyle by Boy Wonder. So before we even get into breaking down any of this stuff, please go watch the video. We spent a lot of time and effort working on it, and along with the video, Boy Wonder also just released a brand new mixtape. And I mean, honestly, I know I have a slight biased opinion, but I think it's an incredible piece of work. I think it's a really cohesive project. So please, anywhere that you listen to music, go listen to Wonder's Land and go watch this video before you come back and watch this one, just to kind of get an idea of some of the shots that I'm talking about and the overall vibe of the video and the song. So how I actually set out to start this project was I was going through TikTok, and I was just watching random videos, and I had always wanted to kind of get into the world of music videos. I had shot some for some friends, you know, a while ago, and they're not the greatest display of my talents, but I had just stumbled across this TikTok video, and I was like, hey, I really like the vibe of this, and I really like the song. And then I discovered that the artist that did this lived in my city, lived in Calgary, and so I was like, okay, well, what am I gonna lose by just reaching out to him and just kind of seeing if this is something that maybe he'd be interested in, you know, maybe he won't even respond, who knows. So I typed up a little email, fired it out. Sure enough, a couple days later, he's like, yeah, absolutely, love the idea, let's meet. In our initial meeting, I kind of came prepared with a lookbook and a general style of kind of what I wanted to bring to the table. And from that, we discussed a general look and a general feel for the video, and, you know, some basic shots that we wanted to try and achieve. So two of the shots in this, actually all three of the shots that we're going to be talking about today, are shots that I had initially brought to the table as inspiration from other pieces of media that I had kind of sorted through. The general stigma around like rap videos isn't always the best, and so my style is very far from the mansions and the girls and the Lamborghinis. I wanted to go for more of an artistic kind of approach to this and show the beauty in the lyricism in the song, and kind of just emphasize a lot of the craftsmanship that goes into a lot of it. A lot of Boy Wonder's music is focusing on Calgary as a place, and as, you know, a place to be. He grew up here and he wants to bring popularity to this city, and so I wanted to emphasize a lot of that and a lot of the homegrown aspect and a lot of just like the authentic vintage kind of grainy aspects of that. So for this project, I was fortunate enough to get my hands on a Sony FX6, and shout out to Ben, who, if you guys have seen a couple other videos of mine, you know who Ben is. He's the director of all the short films that I've worked on. Ben lent me the FX6, and honestly, one of my favorite pieces of cinema equipment, one of my favorite cameras ever. It's so easy to use, and it really did well. It worked really well for this shoot. So with all of that other stuff out of the way, let's jump into the first shot. So the first shot we're going to be taking a look at here is this car shot. It's a super interesting kind of perspective for a shot. I got the inspiration for this shot. I don't remember exactly what the video is called. I know it's a Lyrical Lemonade video. The visual of the shot is simple. You know, the artist performing as the car is driving through different atmospheres. You know, they're looking around. It gives you a lot of motion in the shot without the artist or the camera having to move, which is something that I was really looking for. The setup of the shot was interesting, to say the least. I really wish I would have got some B-roll of all of it. I didn't, unfortunately, get any behind the scenes footage, but we drove in my car, and I was in the driver's seat, and I had my girlfriend Brooke sitting passenger side, making sure that the camera didn't fall over the entire time. But basically what we did is I had set up the tripod over top of like kind of the main console in like between the front two seats in the car. And I mean, basically from there, Brooke kind of just held one of the tripod legs to make sure that the camera didn't wobble around too much and make sure it was pretty static. And then I just drove, and you know, it was super simple, but I think the effect is there. You know, in hindsight, I wish I would have drove somewhere a little more interesting so that you can kind of get maybe some of that cityscape in the background or outside of the car. I was kind of hoping to keep, you know, the focus on the inside and just have things moving in the background. But in hindsight, I think I probably would like to have a little bit more of an interesting visual in the background. So going into the color grading, because honestly, most of this shot is about the color grading. Like if I put up a picture of what the shot looks like when it's completely log profile without any grading, you can see that there is a large difference between that. And you know, with the effect that I was kind of going for and more of that vintage filmic kind of style, I wanted to bring a lot of those yellows and a lot of those warm tones kind of back into it, because the original shot itself is more so on the cool side. Now this was on purpose because I knew that in camera I couldn't get the effect that I was looking for. So a good rule of thumb, if you're planning to go for a certain style in post, white balance is perfectly right in the middle. You know, don't lean to either the warm or the cool side. Make sure that your tint, like your skin tints, and you know, make sure it's right in the middle, not more to the green or more to the magenta. Make sure that your exposure is set correctly, because you can always manipulate that in post, right? If you have perfect settings here, like baked in your clip, then in post you can change to make sure those windows are blown out, or whether you have detail in them, or you know, all those different things. So building this shot up from the base, of course, you know, we've got the Rec 709 LUT. Oftentimes, if I'm really going for a certain style, I'll just grade it straight from the log format. But for something like this, where I enjoyed what it looked like in camera, I put on the Rec 709 and then built from there. I didn't add much of a contrast to this because I really wanted it to still maintain a bit of that kind of flatter look, because I find that in a lot of old media, the contrast isn't super high. Once I adjusted the color temperature, that's where you can start to see a lot of the more style coming into it, as opposed to just replicating reality. I definitely warmed up the shot a lot, and in terms of the tint, I pushed everything more towards the green. Then I did a little bit more of fine tuning in the certain areas. You know, I pushed my midtones a little bit more towards the green, and my highlights a little bit more towards the yellow, to kind of get a little bit more of that grungy, old kind of filmic look into it. And then the last thing I did is just a regular curve, and I pulled a little bit more of those blues out of it, just to kind of bring a little bit more of the yellow into it. So I mean, overall it's a simple shot, but I feel like it's an effective shot. It gives a lot of texture to it. It gives a lot of movement to the video, and it's a unique camera angle. But let's move on to shot number 2. So shot number 2 is a really interesting and unique kind of perspective. I fully got this idea from the A$AP Rocky music video. I'm blanking on the name of it right now. I really like split screen as a tool for certain things like this, because you're able to contrast different things, you know, especially in this shot. You know, the artist is in the same wardrobe the entire time, and we definitely could have swapped that. In hindsight, that might have been a bit more interesting to kind of swap the wardrobe between the two to create a little bit more contrast. But you've got, you know, the nature on the left side, whereas you've got, you know, a grungy parking garage on the right side. Actually getting to these settings was quite tough. Getting to the nature, you know, is easy in Calgary, to find a really nice kind of natural green spot. But for the city atmosphere, I had really wanted something like amidst the skyscrapers, you know, in a kind of a more secluded area where there's not, you know, the hustle and bustle. And I mean, if I knew the city better, I probably could have found something a lot easier. But we walked around for probably about half an hour. And I'm holding a cinema camera with me, so, you know, I'm obviously nervous of, one, people trying to mug me because I'm not the most intimidating figure, but two, of people kicking us out of locations, because I mean, this was a really run and gun kind of guerrilla filmmaking style of video. You know, we didn't get permission for any locations in this. I mean, we shot it in my house and then just a bunch of different outdoor areas. So we really had to get this done quick. And when we found this little parking garage, we were like, okay, easy, let's just shoot it here. And if I play the video, you can see that it was like one take, just quickly run through it as fast as possible.
Okay, wait, I'm just gonna rewind just a little.
But in terms of executing the actual shot, once we had figured out the location for it, was just as easy as, you know, getting the framing, making sure that I was at, you know, roughly the same angle in both perspectives, and then just kind of creating a little outline of where the artist's head was, just to make sure that, you know, we had that for reference. And then in post, I had decided to flip it because it looked a little less wonky. I find if you're not super exact in the way that, you know, the artist is swaying, or a slight little bit of camera jitter at a certain points, like you'll see here, you know, the tip of his nose is on both sides. So if you had that lined up perfectly on the same side, you'd have double the nose and like double the glasses, and it would be really hard to line it up perfectly. So flipping it like that still gives it that contrast, it still gives it the cool style, but it's a little more forgiving for not being perfectly lined up. I think it's executed somewhat well. Ideally, I would have liked to take a little bit more time on it and to really set it up a little more carefully, but we were running and gunning. We didn't know if we were going to be kicked out of these locations or not. We didn't know if security was watching us. So we just quickly ran through it, and, you know, whatever I got in post. And I mean, I think it worked out okay. So for the third and final shot, this probably looks quite familiar for the people who've watched my channel before, because it's kind of just the same setup that I have for most of my videos. I really, really like the top-down kind of view in a bedroom. I had initially thought of putting like a ceiling fan overlay over the top, shooting that as kind of a separate layer and then overlaying that over top. But that was a lot of work, and I didn't know where I was going to find a ceiling fan because I don't have one in here. But I wanted to give it a little more texture than, you know, I have for my videos. You know, this is just my bedroom, but I wanted it to get that very homegrown aspect. That's what I was really going for. I'm like, this is his bedroom, like this is his childhood room. This is where he comes up with all of these, you know, these lyrics, and this is where he gets all this passion from. And so I wanted to scatter a little thing, do a little set deck of kind of spreading stuff around the room. And, you know, a big thing that Tunmibi and I share in common is we're both nerds. So, you know, I threw some of my Batman comics in there. I put my Batman poster up on the wall in the back. I had some basketball jerseys kind of laying out just to kind of represent, you know, these are the things that he draws a lot of inspiration from. You know, a very constant reference in a lot of his music is Batman and is, you know, superheroes and comics and that kind of thing. So I wanted to bring a lot of that homegrown aspect and a lot of that personal feeling into it. So in terms of the setup for this one, because this is the most intricate lighting setup that I had kind of done for the entire video, because a lot of it was run and gun. You can't really see it in the finished video because a bit of it's cut off by this border that I created. But if I show you the entire frame, I really wanted this window back here to be super blown out. I really wanted this to be direct onto the artist. So what I did is I set up my light out on the balcony outside, just like I've done in previous videos. And I shot the light directly pointed at the artist. And of course, you know, I pulled down the blind to give it a lot of that diffusion, to make it a little softer, but still a direct light source. And then I also used a little kicker kind of down in the corner to put a little bit more light on the front face. I didn't want it to be completely overshadowed, so I had just a little bit of light coming from the bottom of the screen. And then lastly, it was about just creating more of the atmosphere and creating more of a soft tone in there. And so I used this fog machine that I just got off of Amazon. It was super cheap, like it's not a cinema grade like hazer or anything, and I just sprayed a ton of fog in there to make sure that, you know, we had a bit more ambience in the room. And then in talking about performance, because I know that this is you know, a cinematography breakdown, and this is more about the visual of the medium as opposed to the directing portion of it, but I really wanted to emphasize this idea that, you know, the perspective of the camera is more of a fly on the wall. I didn't want the artist performing to the camera, although we did do that in a separate take. I wanted this to just feel like, you know, he's just sitting on the edge of his bed. He's been reading these comics. He's been getting inspired. And, you know, he's just performing this song to himself. And so I think that really adds into the whole kind of authenticity of it. And it's really important when talking about cinematography to talk about the point of view of your camera. And so in terms of our coloring and our post-production of this, I mean, it's kind of the same as the other ones. I really wanted to emphasize the warmth in this scene. And so, you know, of course I've got, you know, a bit of contrast in there, but the main part of this is more so just changing that color temperature to bring it a little more on the warmer side, changing that tint to kind of bring it a little more into that green, not very heavily in here. I only have it slightly changed onto the green side. It's very slight. And then, like I had mentioned before, using that S-curve, using the curves tool to get rid of some of those blues and bring forward a lot of that yellow. So that's all for the video today. Thank you guys so much for those of you who stuck to the end. Please, I will once again remind you, go listen to the mixtape, go listen to Wonder's Land by Boy Wonder. I'm telling you, you won't regret it if you're into hip-hop music. It's amazing. Let me know if you guys want a more in-depth editing and coloring breakdown into the work that I did in this video, because I'd be more than happy to provide that for you, to kind of break down some of the effects I did and some of the more technical kind of aspects to it. And leave a comment for some ideas. Video. It really does help me out. It helps to push my videos to more people so that we can kind of grow this little community that we have going on here. Thank you guys once again though so much, and I'll see you in the next one.